Good Wednesday afternoon, everyone watching us here on YouTube. I'm Meteorologist Addison Green here at KHOU, based in the Houston, Texas area, where we're diving in towards that tropical update. And we got a couple of storms to talk about. Tropical depressions Peter and Rose, both of which, as you can see, are now depressions. They were storms 24 hours ago, but barely looked like storms even then, and thankfully they have weakened and will likely continue to weaken over the next few days. Invest 98L, however, is going the opposite direction. It is strengthening and is likely to become a depression or storm very, very soon. So, Tropical Depression Peter is hanging on barely as it moves north of Puerto Rico, east of the Bahamas. We have Tropical Depression Rose that has many factors against it from strengthening and developing, even though it's way out in the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And Invest 98L is on the verge of becoming a depression or a storm, in which case that name on the list would be Sam coming up next. But first things first, the autumnal equinox is upon us on this day today, and it officially arrives in the central time zone, because that's where we are, based in Houston, Texas, at 2:20 p.m. So very soon we'll be talking about fall foliage and nice cool crisp conditions across many spots in the nation. Unfortunately, in Texas, to my liking, we don't get too much of that going on. I'm from the Northeast, and I like my fall foliage, my nice, cool, crisp air, but I'll take whatever I can get. Now, when we describe the autumnal equinox, equinox is Latin for equal nights, and we see as we make our way in throughout the month of September towards the autumnal equinox, we're watching the tilt of the Earth tilting from being towards the sun to now being further away from the sun. But unfortunately, I should say, as we get down towards that midway point, that's when we get the equinox, and that's when the sun is passing from the tropical Cancer down to right over the equator. And then eventually, as we make our way in towards the winter solstice, it's down across towards the Tropic of Capricorn as we are experiencing winter. And down in the southern hemisphere, they're experiencing summer. So, and then it swings back the other direction as we make our way towards the vernal equinox when we welcome in the spring season in March. But as we go forward in throughout the rest of September and in towards October, here across North America, we can see, looking at the jet stream winds, that river of air that looks like a ribbon right here going across the northern portions of the hemisphere. It helps to steer storm systems as well as high pressure systems around the planet. We keep the very chilly polar air locked up north of the jet stream, and southward it's milder to warmer the further south you go. But as we make our way in towards the fall months and winter months, we start to get the jet stream to buckle like this, and every now and then we'll see a pinch of maybe chilly or maybe Arctic air start to slide on down. That's a trough right there. And when we start to see that coming down at the surface levels, we're talking about a cold front making its way from west or northwest down towards the east-southeasterly direction. But as we start to see these dips in the jet stream, these troughs, and their associated cold fronts, these act as natural deflectors towards any tropical activity that may be starting to swing on up towards the east coast back out to sea. Same thing can also be the case if it's making its way across the southern end of the Bahamas and towards the Gulf of Mexico, gets picked up by one of those troughs and gets boom, just slingshot right back out, hopefully just making a glancing blow at best to many populated areas. But as we look forward throughout the rest of this work week and towards the weekend, we have an area of low pressure up aloft right here and its associated jet stream at the surface digging down towards the northeast. They're going to be experiencing some nice fall-like conditions out there for this weekend. And then over the course in towards Sunday, we have high pressure building across the nation's heartland, an area of low pressure, and another trough swinging down towards the northeast. So this time of year, the northeast gets round after round of cool conditions, but that's very fitting over there. But meanwhile, high pressure builds on up, and we get a chance to still see a few mild to warm days out there across the nation's heartland, even up towards the northern plains. But that's why, as we make our way in towards October, we can see where these tropical systems will likely go based on that pattern we just talked about, the jet stream and the movement of those surface cold fronts. Now, typically in October, you'll find a highly likelihood in this orange highlighted area of that's where tropical waves will likely form into depressions or storms. We can also see that prevailing tracks taken up towards the northeasterly direction eventually over time. I mean, you'll still get some storms popping up in the Gulf of Mexico or down in towards the western portion of the Caribbean, where there is more of a chance for them to maybe possibly go in towards a north-northwesterly direction, and there's not a trough and cold front right there to pick them up and put them away from the area. So in which case they'll come up in towards the North Gulf Coast, in which case states like Louisiana do not need any more tropical activity. They've got hit 5 times last year by landfalling tropical systems, and at least 2 to 3 times this year. So yeah, Louisiana does not need any more tropical activity. Much of the Gulf is tropical weary. But we are, speaking of the tropics, have Peter and Rose that we're keeping our eyes on. Like I said before, both are depressions. This little disturbance right here up across the North Atlantic is very interesting. That's the remnant low that was Tropical Storm Odette that formed about a week or so ago off the northeast. Well, it got picked up in towards the Newfoundland area and then had the chance to, at least its course in our circulation, drift back down. And you can see that little swirl right there, right underneath where the X is located. So for the next 2 days, there's a 40% chance of developing in towards a tropical depression or storm. But that chance increases to 60% in the next 2 to 5 days as it goes in towards some slightly more favorable portions of the North Atlantic for growth and development. Will this impact anybody? Not really. It'll probably just meander around across the North Atlantic and then eventually get picked up by us passing by trough, in which case it'll get carried up towards the very colder waters of the extreme North Atlantic, and then it'll be a thing of the past. All eyes though are on Invest 98L, as that has a 100% chance in both the next 2 and the next 5 days. So we'll be talking about another depression or storm in our hands very shortly. Tropical depression Peter, winds sustained at 35 miles per hour, moving to the north-northwest at 7. You can see by those streamlines that we have that center area of circulation, but we can also see those cloud tops are blown completely away from that center of circulation with just a few lingering right there towards the southeast side. So most of the convection is over here, exposing the core. So we are not seeing Peter being very healthy at all, and it has those upper level wind shears to deal with, unfortunately. We have an upper area of low pressure right here and its associated trough extending all the way down towards the central portions of the Caribbean and then making its back up its way towards this vicinity. We also have an area of high pressure up aloft sitting just northeast of the British Virgin Islands. Both of them are helping to slingshot moisture away from that center of circulation that is Peter over towards the north and east. And you can see that southwesterly to northeasterly wind flow up aloft. This is 250 millibars, same altitude that we're talking about a commercial jetliner flying, same altitude that we see those jet stream winds, taking moisture across the Caribbean and also taking moisture right away from Peter. So I left the track at the same camera angle we had yesterday to show you the comparison from yesterday's track to today's track. Yesterday's track, I had this system, or the National Hurricane Center, I should say, had this system, make its way just southeast of Bermuda. Now look where they have the track, barely even getting close to Bermuda as they forecast this system to likely fall apart as a remnant low as late as Friday evening. It could even happen before that, depends on several different variables. But nonetheless, Peter is not long for this world and will become a thing of the past. Tropical depression Rose has winds sustained also at 35 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at 9 miles per hour. And does this look like a tropical system at all? I mean, what is this? You got an area of low pressure that indicates that center of circulation, but there's barely any convection close to that low, and there's barely any convection at all. What little convection we can find is sitting south and east of Rose, and it's barely hanging on. So that's why I said we had several factors going against Rose's potential growth and development, one of them also being the upper level winds, as we have high pressure to the south and east and high pressure to the west, both helping to transport moisture over to the east. But unfortunately, those upper level winds coming in from a northwesterly direction going right over the top of Rose. And that's what we can see right there. We do have that convection displaced down towards the south and east, where it should be right here. We also have Rose running into some drier air just up ahead of it. And also it's dealing with some Saharan dust. And that's despite it pushing away from the more thicker concentrated dust down to the south and east. It's been pulling away from that, making its way towards the north and west, but it still has some dust that's keeping it from growing and developing. And so all those factors right there are not allowing Rose to grow and develop. But nonetheless, we'll see Rose hang on a little bit longer than Peter, eventually becoming a tropical depression, or eventually I should say tropical low, as we make our way in towards the weekend ahead, where it may be impacting portions of the Canary Islands, the Azores, as just some remnant tropical moisture at best, because you can see it does not look like anything close to a tropical system. Tropical wave Invest 98L. This is the one that everyone has their eyes on, because this is the one that could potentially become a big storm over time. It has winds sustained at 35 miles per hour, moving to the west at 14. Pressure is 1,008 millibars. And here's the general area of center of circulation indicated by the L right there from the National Hurricane Center. But we can see via the streamlines where we have that close circulation, it's a little bit more displaced down towards the south and east, where I can see a little bit of some storms trying to fire on up. But most of the convection is over and towards its right side right here. Now, when I'm looking at these cloud tops on infrared satellite imagery, I'm looking for those shades of purple, indicating those more colder cloud tops, as those are the clouds that are reaching towards the top portion of the troposphere. That's the portion of the atmosphere that we live in. And they're hitting that, and it's hitting some colder air up aloft, and that's what's indicative by these color changes via this color palette. So we are not seeing too much purple going on, so you don't see a ton of strengthening developing, but I'm seeing a lot of red, indicating there is a fair amount of convection still ongoing and trying to keep going over time. That's why when we look at the spaghetti plots, the various computer models, they have not locked on towards a center of area circulation because we don't have one just yet, but we will likely have one soon. So yesterday when I showed you this graphic, we had these models starting off a little bit further away. Now they are a little bit closer together down across in this portion of the Atlantic. But as we make our way over the next 5 to 7, even 10 days, we can see that these computer models, for the most part, will be in agreement on where this system will be going. To the west-northwest direction, traveling across the open waters of the Atlantic where they are no threat to anybody. That's why we consider these storms fish storms. But over time, we can see that the various computer models do disagree where the system will eventually be going, but some of them want to take it towards the northern portion of the Leeward Islands, up in towards the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico potentially, but a lot of them are curving up in towards a north-northeasterly direction. And one of the reasons why is because, like we showed you before, with those troughs swinging on down, it's just a natural order of things going forward in this time of the year. With those troughs swinging down, they act as a natural deflector, pushing storms up towards the north and northeasterly direction. But as we look at our two long-range models, the GFS and the European model, starting off from where they have the system right now to where they potentially see it being about 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, we have the European model saying it's going to have a closed isoball right there, indicating a closed area of circulation, so possibly strong tropical depression or a weak tropical storm, while the American model in yellow has more of those isobars closer together, indicating not only a closed circulation, but a more organized system than what the European model is saying. So that may be a slightly stronger tropical system. But wait, there's more. As we move forward in towards Sunday morning, now we have both models pretty much in agreement where the system will be, generally speaking, within maybe like a few hundred miles. But both of them are saying that the system will strengthen and develop some more. So now we're talking about strong tropical storm and maybe a low-grade Category 1 Hurricane Sam as we make our way towards the end of the weekend. Now we go forward even more so, heading in towards Wednesday afternoon, this same time a week from now. And now we can see that system is making its way just northeast of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, the northern end of the Leeward Islands right there. And both models are still consistent in saying that it will continue to strengthen and develop, which means there will be a lack of a ton of wind shear up aloft. Maybe there might be a little bit. There'll be plenty of warm sea surface temperatures, not much interaction with any land masses because they'll still be a few hundred miles away, and also perhaps a lack of Saharan dust choking up and coughing up the exhaust system that is tropical systems. Remember, they are very large heat engines essentially. They have warm cores as opposed to systems that form across, say, the United States or North America. Those are called extratropical systems, and those have cold cores, and those are the ones that have frontal boundaries. Tropical systems do not. They are closed, tight-knit circles, and they're just warm cores, heat engines. But the American model right here definitely has a much more powerful system than potentially the European model, which would be a little bit weaker, and we can see some of those isobars right there, those contours, just extended out a little bit towards the west. So that's maybe indicating we see a little bit of some wind shear pushing on down from a northeast to southwesterly direction, kind of displacing a little bit of those cloud tops. But overall, over the course of the next 7 days, including the weekend, we'll be keeping our eyes on 98 out, as it will likely become our next depression and next named storm, which will be Sam. And after that, we don't have too many other ways we're keeping our eyes on for the time being, but of course, as we make our way through the tropical season, we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Feel free to reach out on social media if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns. We'll keep you updated not only about the tropics, but as well as more seasonable weather as we move in towards the seasons ahead. Have a great day.